Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about a kind of transformational healing, and more specifically, healing the limbic system. But before we get to that, I want to announce that the October Manifestation Bootcamp that we're holding in LA will be going up in price. For those of you that have been listening to the show for a while, you know that I've started a new partnership with a new company, Doug and I both, and that means they will be promoting my events as well and also taking a percentage. So to cover the cost of that percentage, the price will be going up. However, for you guys who listen to the show that aren't connected through that marketing quite yet, you have the opportunity to get your ticket now at the current price, and there's even a payment plan available. And you can get that before July 15th, before the price goes up. So check out jjflazanes.com and under the event tab, or you can go to jjflazanes.com/bootcamp. It's going to be Lisa, Thomas, and I. We're going to be focusing on teaching you tools that you can use and practices on a daily basis, practical things from morning, noon, until night, how to take situations and how to transform them so that way you can keep and maintain a higher vibrational frequency so you can manifest more of what it is that you want in life. We're also going to be removing any blocks, emotional blocks that you may have, because as Lisa is a healer and she clears inherited emotional DNA, at all my live events, she does in-person live group clearings. So even though it's not personalized, it absolutely can tap into those subconscious parts of your brain and healing and body and energy systems that need to be released and removed to allow yourself to sustain a higher frequency longer. So if you've been dealing with the law of attraction and you have some practices, but you don't feel like they're strong enough, and you'd like to know how to practically use all different kinds of very fun, very applicable tools to your life on a regular basis that we will practice all weekend long, and that's on manifesting anything from health to wealth and relationships and love and healing and just joy. So go to jjflazanes.com/bootcamp. You have until July 15th to purchase a ticket at the regular price it's at right now. Today we're going to talk about healing the limbic system and healing in general with Adelina East. She's a transformational healer and intuitive channel, bringing forth healing and restorative messages to support others through this current time and space. Using transformational healing, a methodology channeled to her, Adelina is able to locate and release the inner obstacles to trauma recovery, replacing them with vibrant health and joy. Channeling light and sound key codes from ascendant masters, angels, and teachers, she uncovers and transforms patterned beliefs that no longer serve the client in reaching their best selves. Adelina's decade-long career with United Nations and other humanitarian aid organizations brought her to research and become certified in multiple healing modalities to overcome PTSD, chronic anxiety, and life-threatening health conditions. Now fully in her practice, she teaches others how to tap into their own spiritual gifts through her multidimensional mentorship program. Welcome to the show, Adelina.
Thank you so much for having me, JJ. It's great to be here.
Well, you know, because I believe you said you listened to the show, I am all about transformational healing and intuitive channeling and everything in that space. And I believe you can't get enough of them because I think everyone's gifts are very different. And I use multiple healers. So there isn't just like a one-stop shop, but everybody gets to add their flavor and their essence and their frequency and their gifts and their unique way of expressing what they see and what they do to people who are out there. And I think it all has some kind of benefit. So I'm glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more. I always encourage people to go towards the healer and the kind of healing that most speaks to them. What does their intuition lead them to?
I actually even find benefit in having multiple healers because it almost is a check and balance, because I'll have people who will say the same thing and you might think, oh, well, that person you could discredit, or someone else maybe who uses more Western modalities could discredit and say, well, that's a spiritual perspective. It's not medical. But when you have like 2 and 3 spiritual, medical intuitives tell you the same thing, it's like, this is probably very true. And I don't know how you could connect those 3 people together, but this is the right thing. So Let's talk about how you even got into doing this work and the path that led you to know you had gifts and what education or things that you did to enhance those gifts and then to deliver them.
Sure. So let me just tell you a little bit about my story. I'll back up to the beginning. So I was born to a Ukrainian mom and a Native American dad. And we lived all over the place, but most of my childhood took place in Rochester. But my dad's family is from New Mexico. And so growing up, I got to spend a lot of time with my father's mother, who's my grandmother. And she is still one of the greatest spiritual teachers I've ever had. And so I remember walking around with her near her cabin in Montana in the summers and near her house in New Mexico in the winter, and just kind of picking up herbs and talking to my spirit guides and having this beautiful spiritual experience outside. And those are really some of my first memories. And I believe that she was guiding me through these things and helping me to learn these things as a child. And then I sort of let these gifts go as I aged. You get to a certain point when you're told that you shouldn't be talking to your imaginary friends anymore. And it's more time to focus on school and making friends and that kind of thing. And I didn't really start to pick them up again until I was in my 30s. And I was working for the UN. And I worked all over the world. I loved what I did. I got to work with survivors of domestic violence. And I got to be in places where things were always changing and always happening. And I loved the energy of that. And during that time, I started to tap into my spiritual gifts a little bit more. I started noticing when something was about to happen, I would feel it in my feet. My feet have always been really sensitive. I would feel it in my feet, and I would kind of put the alarms out to people like, I think maybe we should go here tomorrow instead of going to the other place. I don't think that's going to be safe. And then something would happen in the place that we had decided not to go. And I started to notice that this was happening more and more often the more I tapped into my gifts. I started to get back in touch with my spirit guides again. I started feeling them around me. And then when I finished up a contract, I met the love of my life in Bangkok, and we ended up moving to New York. And so once I got to New York, I began working for the UN here. It was a regular sort of job, a job where you wake up in the morning and you go into the office and you're in the office all day, and then you leave when it's dark out. And this was really my first time having a job like that. I had worked in film production in my 20s. So I was used to getting to be outside a lot. And even when I worked for the UN out in the field in different countries, there were always location changes throughout the day. Like maybe I would start the day in the UN Women office, and then I would wrap up the day in one of the government offices, or even outside sometimes working with women in agricultural collectives. And so that was a big change for me. It was a big adjustment. And about 6 months into working in New York, I started to have physical problems. I would sprain an ankle and it would take a really long time to heal, or I'd have moments of extreme anxiety, such anxiety that I couldn't do anything other than kind of indulge in it in that moment. And my husband started to notice things also were changing with me. And then one moment I couldn't move my feet. I was trying really hard to walk and I just couldn't get my feet to move. And things kind of resolved the next day, but then I couldn't type and my hands weren't working as well as they normally did. And things sort of continued like this for a few weeks. I had a few weeks of warning that things were off. The anxiety really intensified. And I was quite far away from spirit at this point. I had been able to tap back into my spiritual gifts while I was working abroad. And for some reason, when I got back to New York, I just really let it go. I got very busy. I got distracted with my new job and my husband, and I was not taking time to take care of myself in the way that I was used to, and taking time for spiritual growth and having time with my spirit guides. And during this time of early warning with these different physical symptoms, I just tried to push through because I'm a New Yorker. That's what New Yorkers do. And eventually things got to the point where I really couldn't walk and I really couldn't type. And I left work on medical leave and started trying to figure things out, I went through a long process of many different doctors. And through that process, I was able to have the time and the space to tap back into my spiritual gifts. But as this was happening, I kept hearing different diagnoses and we weren't sure what was going on. But I found that as I tapped back into myself and started working with my spirit guides again, I started to get better. And that was pretty inexplainable because some of the diagnoses that I had received were like Lyme disease and MS and all of these different kinds of things and chronic anxiety. One therapist told me that I would be on benzos for the rest of my life. And benzos, for those of you who don't know, are drugs that help you to relax, and they work with the receptors in your brain to give you a state of calm. And they generally even out anxiety for most people. But for me, they knocked me out and I was almost asleep all the time, and it wasn't a good way for me to move forward. I understand that it's a great way for some people to move forward, but it wasn't working for me. And towards the end of all of these different diagnoses and doctors and therapists, my spiritual gifts came to fruition in a very big way. So I remember standing in a grocery store and I was getting ready to check out. I was in a wheelchair at the time because I really couldn't walk. My feet hurt so much. And I had my groceries in the front basket of my wheelchair. And I was putting the groceries onto the conveyor belt. And I felt this voice behind me saying, "Talk to the woman behind you." And I just thought to myself, like, well, this is odd. I thought maybe she was speaking to me. So I turned around and said, "Hello." And she said, "Hi." And I said, Are you waiting in line?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Are you feeling okay?" And she said, "No, actually, I have this horrible pain in my stomach and I've had it all day and I don't know what's going on." And I, to this day, am not sure what prompted me to reach out and touch another human being in the city of New York without permission, but I did. I put my hand on her hand and I just said, "Can I help?" And she said, "Yeah." And I closed my eyes and I felt energy moving through me and moving into her. And then I opened my eyes and she said, "I feel so much better. Thank you. I don't know what that was." I said, "I actually don't know what that was either, but thank you." And I bought my groceries and left the store. And as I was going home, it started to really sink in. Like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I understand now that maybe my path in life has gone sideways, and this is it was a great time to work for the UN. I had a wonderful experience with them, but there's a time and a season for everything. And I realized this maybe was not the season. And so I got home and I told my husband about it. And then I called my grandma and we started talking again. We hadn't spoken in over 10 years. We started talking about what had just happened, and she gave me a lot of advice. We talked about herbs again. And then I started working with a really talented herbalist upstate, Dr. Richard Bloom, who I just love and adore. And I gradually got better. It took a few months. It was not an instant overnight thing. And there are still certain things that I am working with, but I got so much better so quickly that it really felt miraculous. And once I was really feeling better, I decided, okay, this is it. I am meant to go back into my healing space and figure out what this is and what it is that I'm doing, because I had taken things like Reiki and Kundalini yoga, and I loved all of these modalities, but I knew that's not what this was. And so I went into a period of meditation and reflection, trying to chat with my spirit guides about what it was that I was doing and what was working and how to make sure that it worked for more people than just one woman in the grocery store, which is amazing. But of course, you want to be able to help as many people as possible. And through this time, I realized that I was working with the limbic system. So a lot of my educational background is in counseling and neuroscience. And the limbic system is this beautiful part of your brain that's responsible for making new memories and your emotional state of mind and your being. And as time went on, I received clearer and clearer messages about how to more deeply work with the limbic system and how to sort of rewire things so that not every moment of my day put me into fight or flight. There was a time where every loud noise, Every time someone called my name, every time I saw certain things just walking down the street, my body would go into fight or flight because it was so accustomed to this from working overseas in these types of environments for a long time. And I had to reprogram my limbic system in order to be able to stay in a homeostasis, in order to be able to get back to that rest and digest space so that my body could heal, so that my mind and my spirit could heal. And so what was finally revealed to me through my guides was that there are certain vocal tones that work for each set of tones works differently for different people, but there are certain vocal tones that tend to work for the most number of people, accompanied by different hand positions that allow that person's limbic system to relax and to reset and to start to overcome trauma. And I would receive, and I still do receive, these vocal tones channeled to me through my spirit guides for each individual and each group that I work with. And I've found it to be such an incredible healing modality for me, as well as the other things that I tried before. And it's been very healing for my clients as well. And I'm so very proud and honored to share it as much as I can.
So you talked about getting the vocal tones channeled to you. How is it channeled to you? Is it in terms of like the frequency number or where to find it? Or is it the pitch that you tap into?
It's the pitch that I tap into. So I hear, I'm clairaudient. And so I hear the tones as my spirit guides are sending them to me, and I reflect those tones out loud. And then I also hear my spirit guides directing me in terms of which hand motions the person can make in order to make new neuronal connections in their brain. And so I pass those on as well.
Let's talk about some of the conditions of people that come to you that you have been able to help with, things that, and I, through your story, did we come up with, or had you come up with a, I hate to say Western or proper diagnosis for your condition that you were treating?
So with my conditions, I'll say conditions because I believe there are many, we never did really come up with a proper Western diagnosis because all of the tests would show like a little bit something off in my blood, but then the neuropathic tests would be completely off for whatever that condition was. And so we never did find a real solid diagnosis. And that's why when I work with people now, I find that many of them have not found real solid diagnoses, but some of them do have diagnoses of things like fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, anxiety, clinical depression, and things along those lines. I find that most of the people that I work with have experienced major trauma in their lives, and whether we want to talk about trauma in this way or not is another question. But I believe trauma to be anything from a car accident to a really damaging fight with your parents or your spouse. And so I've found that every person that I work with across the board has experienced trauma at some point in their lives, and it's become a heavy weight on them that's been very difficult to lift. And I've also found that I tend to be the person that people try after trying other metaphysical modalities. So most of my clients have already tried things like Reiki or Theta healing or different, crystal healing, these kinds of things. Because it does, I understand my presentation of the information at times can be very spiritual. And if people are in a very Western medicine diagnoses kind of mindset, it can be alarming for them.
Well, I'm the person who tries everything pretty much.
I know. I love that.
So someone says, that's how I met Lisa Thomas, was someone told me about her. I was going to interview her for the show. I said, can you explain what it is that you do? And then I went, well, I want that. This is like, and I'm like, oh, can you tap into my vocal tones? Like, of course I want to know what the tones are and the hand gestures that I should be making to heal anything that comes to me. So that's just me saying, this is something that whether or not you even have a condition, understanding what your go-to, it's like in homeopathic remedies, we all have our constitutional remedy, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And understanding what your constitutional remedy is helpful to keep you in a bit of balance, to keep you out of fight or flight, giving another vibrational tool along with all the other ones that we talk about and that I promote. And, between working on some of that trauma through however modalities that you do, making sure that you do keep your conscious mind and your point of focus in a frequency that you enjoy, understanding contrast, being able to, there's several layers of that conscious versus subconscious practices that people can do, as well as even the physical stuff. A lot of people are out of balance just neurochemically because of their food choices and because of their hormones and their lack of hormones, or their poor food choices and some of the substrates that they're missing. So again, this is just one of those tools that I feel is something that would be beneficial for everyone to understand or have if someone can tell them. Now, of course, most people don't pay money or take on something like this until they're pushed up against the wall. Until they absolutely need an intervention because they've tried everything else. And unfortunately, that is where most people lie. I've worked with clients for years, and a lot of them, I'm thinking of one in particular who I've worked with him now for 8 years. And from the very beginning, I've told him his back pain is emotional. It's repressed rage. And we're only now to the point 8 years later where he's actually ready to receive that message. And he's actually currently in the moment doing the work to really dive a little deeper and to really acknowledge all the things and the traumas and the pains that he has literally stuffed down into his lower back. And it's great and rewarding for me because at least I have the trajectory of this time frame to say, okay, finally the seed has been planted and now it's starting to grow something. I don't take it personally like it's my fault if I didn't convince him, but it's nice to be able to finally help someone become free. And so I know that is sort of how you've been led in your life of turning around in the grocery store to the woman behind you to ask if you could help. Now, and that was a case of you using your physical energy. Are you doing physical work with people, or are you just doing virtual work, Skype and Zoom and things like that?
I know you've talked about this a lot too, but so much of this is law of attraction, right? So I love to do physical work, but because I feel that this work is needed in the broader space of the globe, I love to do online work as well. So I do have sessions in New York City. And when I'm traveling for speaking engagements, I hold in-person sessions in those cities as well. But most of my work at this point takes place online with people in many different countries. And in America, most of my clients are, on the coasts, on either one of the coasts or in Florida, because I just did a speaking engagement in Miami at the Soho House. And so what's come to me over the years is that this is a vibrational transmission. And so that woman in the grocery store who was so amazing, I didn't know enough back then to be able to give her a vibrational transmission. So I had to physically touch her hand. But it is vibrational. It is something that goes out into the universe. And this kind of healing doesn't require any hands-on kind of work.
And do you teach, I know you said that you get the tones that are right for the person, and then the hand gestures. So would it be safe to say that a session with you would, and we'll go over what that looks like, what that sounds like, a session with you would be something someone could do where you actually teach them tools, you give them things, and then it's something they can go back to over and over again?
Absolutely. So I have a great example of this, actually. I worked with a woman about a year ago, and the timeline really depends on the person. But if I have to make a general statement, I usually say, let's work together online once a week for 2 to 3 months and then see where we are at that point. And I worked with this woman once a week for 2 months. And by the end of our work together, she said, I just feel such relief. I feel so good all the time. I'm really rarely triggered anymore. It's wonderful. I can't believe this only took 2 months. And that also made me so happy as someone who used to do talk therapy, and that, could take years sometimes. Then, we'd keep in touch a little bit here and there. I'd get emails from her with vacation photos or whatever she had going on, and she was living her best life. And then something happened with one of her children, and she felt incredibly triggered by it. And she wanted to just have one session just to check in and get some tones to clear that, because she was feeling pretty traumatized from that experience. And so we did one session. I delivered the tones and the hand gestures, and each client is given the option to record the session over Zoom so that they can use these tones over and over again. And I usually recommend that they use the tones every day, either right when they wake up or before they go to sleep, for a week or two. It depends on the person and the trauma. And so after our check-in session, after not seeing her for a year, she used the tones for another week, and then she felt completely wonderful again. But she'll always have those tones. So if that starts to back up on her at any point in time, she doesn't need to reach out to me again, unless, of course, she just wants to. She can just go back and listen to her recording of the tones and start using them again for a few days and see how she feels.
This is good to know, because I think it's important that while, especially with the in-person sessions, I want to bring people information, because this show gets listened to in over 175 countries. We have people over the world who are never going to be able to see you in person or see me in person. And obviously bridging that gap through the use of technology, which is great, is a good way to start. But also just for the sheer fact, and I want to talk a little bit about your psychological background and the combination of that, because as I work with certain healers, I have my top 3 or 4 of them, they do energetic work, and it's effective and it works, and just like I'm sure that yours does as well. And then there comes a point in time, though, where there's also the need for the other side. There's the need for the things that you can't control or clear from me, which is how I interpret information, which is how I see the world, which is how I process emotion, not how I hold it, not if I'm holding it. It can release and be cleared of certain things, but then there's the sort of daily things like the skills that get taught, which I find I do complementary to some of the healer friends that I work with, because they are handling sort of those past traumas, the past life traumas, the emotional things that the people are holding on to. But the combination of the two, I'm going to call left brain, right brain, or subconscious as well as conscious mind, to me make the perfect package for people really moving the needle on maintaining that healing. It's like a chiropractic adjustment. Adjustments are great and useful if it's a physical issue you're having, but if you're not having a physical issue, most of the time people get adjusted and it doesn't hold. And so it's that understanding of it feels good temporarily, but you end up right back to where you were, because it's either not physical or you're not doing the other physical things like exercise to retrain the brain how to hold your body. So let's speak to the psychological background that you have and how you coach people, handle people, recommend things that they can do to make this combination of frequency and vibration on their energetic system and energetic body, as well as how they process and just see the world.
So, this is, of course, purely based on my experience. But what I have found is that when you have experienced a lot of trauma, or even just have experienced a lot in your life that's feeling heavy at the moment, there is always a limbic system impairment. And so what I like to do is first walk people through how their limbic system works, how the cingulate cortex, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and the amygdala all work together to process things that you just mentioned, your daily life, how you see the world, how you react and respond to things. And so I like to first go through those things and teach people how all of that is put together in their brain, and how we can reprogram this in order for their brain to actually see and interpret information differently, to see and interpret information with a more high vibratory quality, so that they have a more calm and peaceful sense of life as they go through their day-to-day.
Is it something we can do right now? Is it something we could do right now quickly? I mean, I know you probably would go into it in more depth, but could we teach people about the limbic system right now?
Sure. This is going to be a very quick summary. Normally this takes about 40 minutes, so I'll try to condense as much as I can. So your amygdala, a major part of your limbic system, it processes your survival information and it encodes your emotional memory. It's also the fear center of the brain. So, for example, if you've been in a car accident, your amygdala has sent the emotional memory and the survival information throughout the rest of your brain. Here's a car. If I get in it, it might crash and I might get hurt again. So I'm not getting in that car again. That's not happening. And I have worked with a lot of people who've had car accidents and are not able to be in cars. By the end of our treatment together, they always are. But I'm going to use the car accident as an example because it's a good one. So once your amygdala has taken in that information, it influences the storage of fear associations in the hippocampus. So now we're working with two parts of the brain. The hippocampus processes and stores information, and it assigns value and meaning to the information that's coming in. And so what has been found actually through Dr. Daniel Amen's work is that through altered states of consciousness, we can change the meaning of something. We can change the value and the meaning assigned to certain information that's come in. So over time with chronic stress, your hippocampus actually ends up changing in shape, and it changes the value and the meaning assigned to the information coming in. Going back to that car accident example, you've been in a car accident, you've experienced chronic stress from this car accident, and now it's not only cars that make you experience this fight or flight and this chronic stress, but it's also just any moving vehicle. So suddenly, before you had a fear of cars, now there's a fear of cars and a fear of buses. So now there are two modes of transportation you can't take. The positive side of the hippocampus, and what I work with my clients, is that we know that the hippocampus neurons actually regenerate faster than any other neurons in our body. So I can take you through a process later in the show if you'd like of regenerating some of these neurons using the vocal tones and the hand motions.
Sure.
The third part of our brain that gets involved is the hypothalamus, and it's our internal chemist. And it's the way that our health is managed in the body. I'm sure you know so much more about the hypothalamus than me based on your years and years of experience as a health professional. But it's always trying to create equilibrium. And it's in charge of your behaviors and eating and drinking, sexual behavior, alertness, energy levels, your rage or aggression. The hypothalamus is always trying to get us back to that state of equilibrium. And it's also the brain center for hormones. So going back to our car accident example, you're in a car accident, your body goes into fight or flight. Perhaps chronic pain exists in your body because your limbic system, these first three parts we've talked about, have been sending you constant signals that there's danger around every corner, because as you go down the street, you see cars, you see buses, other moving vehicles. So at this point, your behaviors in eating and drinking have completely changed because you're in this state of constant stress. As you know, and I'm sure work with a lot of clients who have this, you're craving more sugar, and that ends up creating more hormonal problems, and it becomes more of a cycle here. And then in the cingulate gyrus, or the cingulate cortex, this is where your pain and emotion meet in the brain. So we've already heard about all of these three other processes that are going on, but once we get to the cingulate gyrus, we see how pain is processed and how it's perceived. And it really dictates where we decide to focus our attention. And so if the cingulate gyrus is off, if it's experiencing trauma, if it's experiencing chronic stress, then all negative stimulus that comes towards us has access to the brain. And so that memory of that car accident, there's a reason why you still remember it, why you still feel those feelings, why you're feeling that pain, even if the car accident was 10 years ago. Because the cingulate gyrus, when it's traumatized, has a very hard time helping you filter out your thoughts. And as I know you've talked about a lot, it's our perception. Are we perceiving things in the highest of all light, or are we perceiving things with a very negative filter? And so this cingulate gyrus really needs to be functioning properly, or we get caught in these negative spiraling loops of thought. And this in turn creates more chronic pain, more inflammation throughout the body, and it becomes even more of a cycle. What's been channeled to me with my spirit guides is that as I'm going through the tones with people, I hear certain frequencies that correspond to certain organs or certain points of pain in the body. And I hear certain frequencies to reprogram this whole system, this whole limbic system, so that your perception is altered, so that when you see a car, it no longer brings you such immense stress and pain. You just see a car and say, oh, that's a car. We also I do work with clients after they've told me the story of their trauma. And if they're not comfortable talking about it, that's also okay. But I encourage them to now tell me a more positive story. Let's get started reprogramming the brain right away. So tell me a more positive story about what happened. So I was in the car. I saw a car up ahead of me. I pressed the brakes and the car accident didn't happen. Okay, now let's go more positive. Let's not talk about the car accident at all. And then the client can paint a picture of the beautiful breakfast that they just had with their spouse. They're driving along one of their favorite streets. They see a car in front of them. They press the brake. The car doesn't crash, and they feel wonderful for the rest of the day. And we keep talking through this a few times until we get to a point where the car accident doesn't exist. There's no negative associations with the car. And I ask them to continue this positive visualization of their morning out with their spouse as I deliver the tones and they create the different hand motions. And so repetition for the limbic system makes it work much, much more effectively. And it can actually transmit these frequencies to the limbic system to overcome the traumas and the negative things that have happened thus far.
It's an interesting story because it leads me to think about the people that say you can't go back and change the past, right? And it's like, but you can go back and change your perception of it and your relationship to it. So it's not about people who go, well, I can never change it. That's what happened to me. Well, it's what happened to you. But when you do shift the way you see it and the way your body interprets it, it does change the way you feel about it, which is the whole point of healing in the first place. When you are going to look at what has caused trauma for you or what has really been one of those traumatic PTSD moments, you're not going to necessarily change the act, but you can absolutely rewrite a whole new relationship with it, which then leads to different feelings. And that's the whole point, right?
Right. And all we have to do is interrupt that circuit of negative thoughts, because one negative thought leads to another negative thought, leads to another negative thought. And before you know it, you're in a spiral. So all we have to do is interrupt that circuit. And the earlier we can do it, the easier it comes.
Okay. So you said you were going to walk us through a small exercise?
Yes. And I was talking to my guides about this chat that I plan to have with you today. They were sending me information about energy and people's need for more energy. So what I'd like to do is walk us through a process of creating more energy, having more energetic space in our bodies, but also having more physical energy to get things done. Does that sound good?
Yes. And I have to ask, when your guides were leading you down this path, was it for the whole audience or was it for me? Because it sounds like it was more for me.
Well, I'm very happy that it's for you, but it's also for the whole audience. I did check in and see if there were certain conditions that they wanted me to work on, but there weren't, because you do have such a wide audience. Not everyone that's listening is experiencing chronic pain or anxiety or depression. So let's do something that everyone can take advantage of. I find it hard to imagine that there is no one on earth who would like to have a little bit more energy in the day.
Agreed. And before we start this process, because I'm curious, you and I talked before I pressed record, and you are a Cancer sun sign. Do you happen to know your moon sign?
Of course. I'm a Cancer sun sign. I have a Leo rising and I have a Virgo moon.
Wow. Okay. So I'm sitting here because Cancers, as I'm sure you know, and I did not write this. This is not my opinion. This is time and time again of 20 years. I pick up from you a very responsible, not victimized Cancer. And that is new for me. The Leo rising definitely is that leadership quality that you have and that fire and moving into more Leo in the second half of life. So I feel your Leo. The Cancer part, obviously, with all of the spiritual work that you're doing is how I'm sure you tap in and channel all of that. The Virgo moon really is interesting to me because I guess maybe that Leo rising really balances that out, because that Virgo moon, it's good. You do feel very secure and solid. I feel a strong foundation. You have things, so you have both that left brain part and that right brain part, which is really good, because sometimes the problem with healers, which is why I think the people that listen to this show like me, is because they're slightly skeptical of anybody too right-brained. And so, or and or right, that they have that sort of middle, they want more structure. It hasn't worked to just go so far. Like, I definitely am not the right person for the people who are just 100% right brain, who can't
Mhm.
function in structure, who don't know how to have structure, won't do it. They keep wanting to sit in their ADD. I'm ADD diagnosis. Don't ever ask me to change or be different. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, so interesting. So thank you for sharing that. Is there anything you want to say about that? Because for my own
Yes.
curiosity. Okay.
So I love being a Cancer sun sign. I do feel that I am so blessed and gifted to be so tapped into my emotions. Though in my earlier part of life, that was really hard for me. I remember being super dramatic and always being called dramatic in school. And that was a big thing to heal. And I did heal that along the way. But what I like about having a Virgo moon is that I am able to have a bit more of a scientific approach to this metaphysical healing. And I also find that the Virgo moon really helps me delve into my more earth centered part of healing. I love to work with herbs. And I have a business partner, and we're actually working on a specific herbal product at the moment. And we really enjoy that work. And I find that having a Virgo moon helps me to ground a little bit more carefully instead of just kind of being up in the ethers.
Well, it's a great combination, the fire, the water, and the earth. It feels very balanced. So you feel very balanced. I know sometimes that people think I don't like Virgos, and that's not what I have ever said. I just said there's a lot of people out there who have Virgo moons that are unwilling to change. But
Yeah,
your Cancer and your Leo don't allow you to stand still and don't allow you not
exactly.
to grow, because the emotion, you're too connected to the emotion, and the Leo wants to get it done, and the Leo wants to move forward and wants to shed anything stopping it. So I think that combination really helps.
Thank
um,
you.
so hopefully people that are listening, I don't not like Virgos, that's not the point. I just was leaving you all off the hook for the times where you tell me I want to change, but year after 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 year, you don't, because
Oh,
right. All right, so
frustrating.
right, so let's take us through that exercise.
Okay. So I'm going to ask everyone to stop the car if they're driving, because this is a vibrational transmission. I want to make sure that you're safe. And place your feet on the floor. Get into a comfortable position. And put yourself out into your favorite place outdoors. This can be a real place or an imagined place. Just picture yourself there and ground your feet into this place. And bring the healing energy of this place up your feet and all the way up your body, letting it flow out from the top of your head and filling in the space 4 feet around you on every side. And then slowly and gently move your mind, body, and spirit up out of this place and up through the sky, up through the clouds, pass by the planets and the stars, and keep moving up higher. Go through the blues and purples and greens of the universe. Move through the laws of the universe, thanking them for their influence. And move your mind, body, and spirit all the way up to a place of universal energies. We'd like to call in our spirit guides to work with us today. And just feel this iridescent, pearlescent white light surrounding you. And now take a moment and set your intention for the next few minutes to receive this energy, that your mind, body, and spirit are open to receiving this energy, greater energy with which to move through your day. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And now connect your first finger with your thumb. If you're a yogi, this is Gyan Mudra. You're just connecting the fingertip of your first finger with the fingertip of your thumb on both hands. And connect the tips of your ring fingers and your thumbs on both hands. And now connect your pinky finger with your thumb, tips of pinky fingers with the tips of your thumbs. And relax your hands. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. A deep breath in and a deep breath out. A deep breath in and a deep breath out. And now gently and softly bring your mind, body, and spirit out of this beautiful place of universal energies and move down through the laws of the universe, down through the different colors, down through the planets and the stars, and very gently and softly place your feet back into your favorite place in nature. Feel your feet touching down here. And ground your feet into this space and pull the healing energy up from the center of the space all the way up through your body, concentrating it in any places that hurt along the way. And then allow this beautiful energy to flow out of your head, out of your crown chakra, the very top of your head, and fill in the space around you, 4 feet on every side. And take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And slowly open your eyes.
Beautiful. Hopefully everyone will get to experience that again. You know, you can go back and listen to it when you're not driving, if you were driving, and hopefully you heeded direction and didn't do it while you were driving. Otherwise, you probably would have a car accident. I am not responsible, and neither is Adelina for your not listening. So that was beautiful. Thank you. I found
Thank you.
really fascinating with what's going on with me right now, that when you said your favorite outdoor place, I went to my backyard.
Yeah.
And as I started to cry, like feel the feelings well up, I thought to myself, my brain was trying to find this isn't the only space. Find another space. So I went
Mm-hmm.
to another space, and then it went back down. Like it was an interesting energetic shift to really to focus on, something that's a heightened emotional experience for me right now, and then to decide before it overcame me completely to
Mm-hmm.
shift it to someplace else. And then when I focused on that other place, it kind of came back down, and then I was able to really be present in the whole exercise. So hopefully
Great.
for everybody else, there's no resistance or triggering happening when you're picking your place like there was for me, but that's only because of what I've been going through
Mm-hmm. And
recently.
I think it's amazing that you were able to make a quick about face and change the outdoor place to a place that feels good.
Well, it was a great exercise to show me I could.
Mm-hmm.
That, when it comes to things like this is not necessarily the best analogy across the board here, but like when you're having a calf cramping in the middle of the night because you have your muscle has contracted and therefore now it's actually it's seizing up. The best way to get out of a calf cramp when you feel it coming is to contract the opposite side, which is your tibialis interior, which is by flexing your ankle. So there have been times where I can feel the calf cramp going to happen, and I will literally pull it apart by contracting the opposite side. That's the physical expression of that, but literally this was the focal point mental just choice. I was there, I focused on, but that's the power of
Mm-hmm.
our focus, and how strongly I'm having emotions about one thing that quickly, a tear did run down my face, but before I could stop it, and not that I was trying to stop my emotion, I was just trying to be present in the exercise. So I was like, oh, pick a different place. So the minute I refocused, my body responded appropriately to that feeling and emotion and relationship to that place. So it just gives me another tool to remind people that you have the power in your focus to do that too. It's not, I'm pretty well practiced in it, but it can happen to anybody. So thank you for that opportunity to test myself in the emotional state that I'm in right now. I'm pretty vulnerable. I'm pretty raw, and I'm pretty tired. My whole body has been in a trauma in a way for the last
Mm-hmm.
30 days. And so if I can pull myself out within a couple seconds, I believe everybody else can learn to do the same. So
I believe that too. And every time you do that, you're growing a new neuronal pathway in your brain, reminding you that you have this power, that you can do this. It's beautiful.
excellent. So tell us how people can I know you've got a free audio healing and guided meditation and vocal tones that someone could get right now and try it on their own. Yes?
Yes. So there are free audio healing tones to deal with trauma that are up on my website now. And when you click the button, it literally says free audio healing on the button, so you can't miss it. When you click that button, you'll be subscribing to my newsletter, and I send out updates and deals and offers every month. So that's definitely something to check out. And then also on my website, I have vocal tones for specific conditions, and we're just continuing to build up that library. And so for $44, you can buy some tones for whatever your particular condition is at the moment and start to feel some immediate relief. What I like to tell people though is book a session. Let's have a session and let's talk through whatever is going on so that we can accurately figure out which tones are best for you. And plus, when you book a session with me, you receive personalized tones that are just for you that you get to keep. You record them over Zoom, and then you can keep using them for as long as you need. So I like to interact with people in a lot of different ways. So those are just some of the ways that we can work together.
And that link is adelinaeast.com, ADALINA, adelinaeast.com. And you could
Yes.
do /contact, right? I have here
Mm-hmm.
forward, or is that not right?
That's right.
Okay. So ADALINA, Adelina East jjjamesward.com/contact to get the link for the free audio healing, including guided meditation and vocal tones, and just check out everything else. I want people just to, like, right now in the moment, I'm sure there are going to be people who feel called to work with you right now, and they're also going to reach out and just want to book a session. But for everyone else that wants to experience a little bit more, because that's how humans are, right? We want to taste a little bit more before we buy sometimes. Definitely make sure to get her free audio healing and guided meditation, because I'm sure that you experienced what I did, which was a very calming, peaceful, and energizing little exercise that we just did right now. That was a great meditation that you can, it wasn't even, maybe it was 5 minutes, but imagine doing that more than one time a day. So you already have that. It would definitely be worth getting whatever else you have that's complimentary to start. And like I said in the beginning of today's show, I'm a big fan of it. It's never going to hurt to have a session and try, because every healer has a different, way of delivering and a different frequency, which they pick up on different things. And it's all beneficial, because it's all in the name of healing and higher frequency vibration and getting us to the state where we're whole and helping ourselves to keep ourselves in a state of homeostasis and the ability to heal ourselves. So I appreciate you being on the show today.
Thank you so much, JJ. It was my pleasure.